Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our President's Lunch. It's exciting for us. We had worked on our special guest speaker today for prior to the pandemic, but we're finally getting around to having that conversation that we so wanted to have, and I know you wanted to have as well. So my name is Greg DeRocher. I'm President and CEO of the Cambridge Chamber of Commerce, and we're pleased to have you join us today. The Chamber's vision is to inspire, change, and lead in fostering greatness in our community and economic prosperity, to make Cambridge the most envied city to live, work, play, and of course, build your business. I want to mention that today's hashtag is CAMBCOC. That's hashtag CAMBCOC. So if you're going to be tweeting out or sending out some social media, please use that hashtag so that we can follow along with you as well. I also want to introduce some dignitaries here today. First of all, our board of directors. Mirzad Salkorde from DB Noise Reduction is with us. Murray Smith from Blue Canoe Consulting is with us. And Peter Voss from Shimco. And yes, that is Frank Voss's brother. So there could be a little sibling rivalry going on here. Prakash Venkataraman is with us as well, another board member, and Nicole Pereira from Cambridge Center Honda is with us as well. So thank you very much for attending this afternoon. Also, some regional councilors are with us, and Councillor Jim Erb from Waterloo, regional councillor, and Waterloo Region councillor from Cambridge, Carl Kiefer, is with us as well. I want to thank our sponsors today. You know, we say this all the time that we can't do these things without great corporate support. So our presenting sponsor is Cambridge Toyota. I want to thank them for supporting our programming in particular, and thank you very much for supporting the event today. Also, Energy Plus Inc. is a great supporter of chamber programs, and there's some exciting news coming on their behalf very shortly as well. We'll be excited to hear that, but thank you very much for your diligent support of our program. And JD Development Group, they're doing some wonderful things. Right beside the YMCA, you can see a beautiful condo development going in there. That's the JD Development Group. They're strong supporters of our program, and we certainly appreciate them. And also our supporting sponsors, Immigration Partnership of Waterloo Region, Gowling, WLG, and Graham Matthew. These are organizations and businesses that support us all along the way, and we certainly appreciate everything that they do. Now let's get right to it, because we got lots to talk about. I want to introduce the president of Toyota Motor Manufacturing, Mr. Frank Voss. He is responsible for automotive assembly plants in Cambridge and Woodstock, which produce the gas and hybrid models of the Toyota RAV4, the Lexus RX 350 and 450h, and the newly added Lexus NX vehicles. Prior to assuming his position, Mr. Voss was Vice President of Administration and a Corporate Secretary at Toyota Motor Manufacturing in Kentucky, in Georgetown, Kentucky. Mr. Voss joined TMMC in 2002 as a General Manager of Information Systems, and in 2004, he moved to Production Control as General Manager of New Model Projects. In 2009, he moved to Manufacturing as General Manager of Lexus in TMMC's South Plant, overseeing all production functions, including stamping, weld, paint, plastics, and assembly. He also had responsibility for facilities and environmental engineering across all of TMMC. Mr. Voss is a registered professional engineer with a bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering. He's also been very active in the community and has participated on many boards. Mr. Voss and his wife, Diane, live in Kitchener. Give a hearty chamber welcome to Mr. Frank Voss. Frank, how are you?
Greg, very good, very good. Thanks for that introduction. It was quite a long list of assignments, but I'm glad to be here today and have an opportunity to talk to everybody.
Everybody says that about their bio, and they don't realize how many accomplishments and many things that they've done. But Frank, I came across you right in the early days of 2002. We've been running the the chamber also runs the plant tour program out there. And while it's been on hiatus, while we get over this little issue that we've been going on, we've had a long and strong relationship with TMMC in providing a great program out there. In fact, in the very beginning, Frank, when we talked about that, I actually took a trip down to TMMK and went on the plant tour program there. And let me tell you, it knocked my socks off. First of all, I'd never seen an automotive plant that had 2 interstate exchanges exclusively designed just for them. This is a massive, massive plant, and pretty easy to get lost around there. So you actually need a tour guide when you just walk through the plant. But how was your time in Georgetown? How did you enjoy it down there?
Quite honestly, Kentucky's a beautiful place. It's a wonderful state. People are very, very, very friendly and accommodating. I really enjoyed my time down there. And Diane, she came down and she enjoyed the time that we had down there as well. On weekends, we got a chance to travel and see different parts of the state, and very interesting, And we've always had a very special relationship between TMMC and Kentucky, because they started production just before we did here in Ontario. And typical US fashion, they do everything big. So they've got the largest land site, they've got the largest buildings, almost 7 million square foot under roof up there. And in Canada, we started with a single line, right? We made 50,000 Corollas on that first line that we had here, and they already had a line that made 200,000 units. And they've grown production down there, but we've continued to grow as well. And in this small space that we've got between ourselves here in Cambridge and in Woodstock, we've grown to be the largest manufacturer in terms of vehicle quantity and output of any of the plants in North America. So there's always this rivalry, right? They say they're the biggest, yeah, in square footage maybe, but in terms of output, we definitely surpass them and any other plant in the Americas.
Yeah, I found it was a great experience for me to go down there and actually see the tour program. The tour program, for those of you who in Kentucky, actually at the time, was the second largest tourist attraction in the state of Kentucky, right behind the Kentucky Derby. So, that was kind of our role in our introduction into it. And of course, we're a Chamber of Commerce and thinking, well, how the heck are we going to do anything that they can do there, being the second largest tourist attraction? But it's been a remarkable program here. We put, when we were up and running, we were putting 18 to 20,000 people a year on tours through the production facilities, which, by the way, are second to none in North America, from my perspective. But it has really been, from our perspective, an ability for us to identify our community. Because when you go in there and you see the skill and the quality that is done at TMMC here, it really makes you proud as a person in Cambridge. Like, you feel, wow, we're doing something really fantastic here. And I know it, every single person I've talked to that have gone through that plant have said they're just absolutely mind blown with the cleanliness and the attentive to the detail and the automation that's in that plant.
Yeah, great. And the relationship with the Chamber has been excellent. And we really appreciate the professionalism and the great level of care that's done on that tour to make sure that the story that gets told, it represents the energy and the passion of the many team members that we've got on the floor. They're also members of the community, right? They send their families here, they send relations and friends to come. So we want to make sure that when they come, they get that world-class experience, and Chamber's done a great job making sure that happens. So we really appreciate the relationship.
No, it's been really great, and we just love it. We're nearly 2 years into this pandemic. Actually, we were a month away from 2 years into this pandemic. Obviously, by this time, given the reach of Toyota globally, we know that there were indications. Toyota is a massive company with their tentacles everywhere. You must have known by February 2020 that there were going to be problems here, and so the planning or the idea of some disruption of some sort was looming. What were kind of the things you were worried about as president CEO? What were the things you were most concerned about at that point, Frank?
Yeah, back in February, I think that was really early days, right? Because we didn't take our shutdown when we actually shut down for 7 weeks until March. But even at that time, there was already discussions about around the world. They were seeing pockets, and there was more a discussion about the potential of the infection. And at that time, nobody knew how severe this was going to be, right? Didn't know what the infection rate was going to look like. Didn't know what the impacts were going to be. But there were already discussions around the potential to cause significant impact to the overall supply chain. So we already started to think about, well, what are the protocols? When we have our first incident, what are we going to do? How is this going to impact us overall? And I can remember getting on late night phone calls, and it was a process of, trying to learn and understand what the potential of this virus was going to be. But then more importantly, how are we going to protect our team members? What would be the response from the company side? And, I'm really happy to say that we were quite willing to do what's right. And that meant shutting down production, right? It meant if we did have an incident and we had to take care of team members, we would stop and we'd figure it out and work through it. And that's really how it did transpire. So when we had our first incident, we had teams ready to support getting in there to disinfection and cleaning, but really we didn't have a playbook. Nobody had a playbook at that time. And that's when everything started to figure out how we were going to work together. And that meant, figuring out entry protocols and temperature screening and masking and all of these things. So I am happy to say that we did get a lot of good cooperation with our associations and our supply base to figure out what would be the best way to come back and work. And, you mentioned Patrick Gaskin before, a great friend of Team MC. And, I know Patrick personally, and we reached out to him as well from the medical community. What are you doing? What are the things that you would recommend? And from all of that, we came up with a playbook. And by the time our team members came back, I think we had a pretty good system in place to make sure that they'd be safe.
Yeah. And I think, what I guess a lot of people, might think, you got this big company, out there, but the people are the most important asset that the company has, because you can't do anything that you do without the people. So, I know from past experiences in what Toyota was involved with in trying to make sure that their employees are taken care of from a perspective of a workplace. It must have been like an enormous challenge for TMMC to sit back and say, first of all, Frank Voss needs to become a science expert as well as a manufacturing expert. You need to understand these things to make decisions moving forward. Do you think that from your perspective, now that you've been through that, the playbook would be not easier, nothing's easy to deal with, but you'll be better prepared moving forward if this were to ever come up again?
I think you already have a good basis. People understand what the potential is, and that's already in your mindset, right? You already know that you're going to have to take actions that sometimes are quite broad, and it will affect a lot of people and production. So I think the next time it will be much better, because we developed a lot of new systems as well. Going through this, one of the key points that I want to reiterate as we have this discussion today is about communication. Toyota has a philosophy of respect for people. It's one of the pillars of Toyota Way, and that it does mean different things. But one of those is trust. And to establish trust, you have to have a relationship, and a part of that relationship is open and honest communication. So during the pandemic, we did things that we would never have considered before, and technology played a big part in that. We did things like a town hall. We set up this live broadcast, and the executive, including myself, basically we would explain to team members the situation the best as we knew it, and information was flowing pretty fast at that time, right? And we were making decisions almost on the fly, but having a face-to-face with the executive and these town hall meetings, technology allowed us to have Q&A. Team members are at home, right? They're dialing into these things on iPads, their personal computers, whatever. And they're asking questions directly to me, and I'm doing my best to answer them. And I think that established a lot of trust with team members. just to make sure that we could dialogue about what we were doing and how it was going to impact them as best we could. I mean, 7 weeks is an unbelievable time to shut down manufacturing operation this side. And, they also want to know, how's it going to affect me? Am I going to be okay? Is my family going to be okay? And that respect for people comes back to, we also made sure that we were going to take care of them financially, right? And nobody got laid off, nobody lost their job. And I think that theme came back over the last 2 years over and over with the parts supply disruptions and the way we worked through that together with our team members. I think that was a very important part. So those systems are in place, right? People know. So the next time it happens, there's an expectation, and I think we'll carry that off very quickly.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. The communication, the new communication that you ended up having with your employees has renewed the confidence your employees have in their employer. And because of that, I think it's the benefit of, if we can find any benefits out of a pandemic, the benefit has been we've learned how to better communicate with our people and those we need to communicate with. But speaking of our people and communicating with them, from your perspective, how has your staff weathered the storm? We hear about lots of other places where we're very concerned about the workforce. I know, your workforce, you've kept them employed, you've kept doing the things that they need to do. You're an essential workplace. So, you weren't affected by the protocols like a lot of the other, a lot of other businesses were. But how do you feel your people are doing?
It's a good question, because I think everybody has got lots of stress, right? Regardless of whether you're working or not. This feels like Groundhog Day. This thing just won't end. It's over and over and over. And I think the fact that we can't get on with normal life just is raising that level of stress. The baseline of annoying, stressful. I just want this to get over with. That's always there. From a workplace perspective, though, I think the fact that team members, after we got through the first couple of shutdowns and they understood what we were going to do and how we were going to work, I think that really did lower their mental risk, so to speak. They knew that they were going to have a paycheck, they could pay their bills, and they were going to be okay. And we were going to do the right things to as best we could to keep them safe. So that did help. We are still working through a lot of things. Work from home was a big trend in the industry, and we did the same thing here. We let team members that could work from home do that. It is hard, though, when you're in a manufacturing environment. You can't build cars at home, so all of our production team members had to come to work, and our office staff, basically their customer is on the floor here, so we need to have them here to do their job, the majority of them. So we came up with rotating work from home and tried to accommodate best we could, and reduce the density in the office space. So we worked through all that. So we tried to think about working well together and doing the best that we could to give team members some relief. But I still think that as long as this pandemic is going on, there's always going to be that irritant factor, that little bit of mental stress from the fact that you don't have complete freedom. You can't travel freely. You can't do these things. And I'll be looking forward to the day that I can get rid of this.
Yeah, I think we all will be. And I think, that I think we all recognize we got to do the things we got to do, but at the same time, we look for that day of relief when mentally we know that things are kind of back to normal, and that, we can assume what we can assume, but we know that we're not going to be hamstrung with some of these shutdowns. Because I think, quite frankly, that's the nervous feature right now in business, small businesses in particular, who are affected by shutdowns. They don't know what's going to happen now that we've kind of opened things up and it's all back to normal. What's going to happen when, Patrick says, sorry, there's no more room in the inn, and you can't get anybody into the hospital. But let's hope that we're on that path to a little bit better. I want to talk a little about the supply chain, because it's been probably, Frank, one of the hottest topics that most people have been talking about. You read about it in the news just about every single day. But we read about it in the news prior to the pandemic. And then all of a sudden you layer on a pandemic where disruptions are going to come into every facet of the supply chain. We had 9/11 that affected I can remember. I can actually remember talking um, to TMMC back in those days about mirroring transport trucks coming over, because the transport trucks were going to be, they didn't know which ones are going to be stopped and scoured. And so you had to kind of mirror, because you got 4 hours worth of parts on hand at any given time. What changes do you think are going to come from that? And what do you think from your perspective is going to be the driving force that's going to help you have a little bit more reliance or dependency or confidence in the supply chain that you need so badly?
Yeah, it's a real challenge for all of us, because we're still struggling with cost. Everybody wants to be competitive. We can't suddenly go out and add inventory everywhere to provide resilience, because you don't know where that next problem is going to come from, right? You still need to make sure that you're trying to run a lean operation, and that's the fundamental from TPS. We're trying to eliminate waste and trying to run lean operations. So I still think that's the right thing to do. And we are working closely with our supply chain. I mentioned communications before. I think the same goes with our suppliers. We've done a very good job, I think, of improving our communication up and down the supply chain, whether that's through digital tools to understand inventory and to understand shipping condition. We have improved our visibility of our logistics, right? So we understand where we've got holes in the supply chain. Because you got to remember, TMMC, we have about 450 tractor trailer loads of freight that show up every day. So that supply chain has to be pretty solid to be able to run. It only takes a few parts missing before you're shutting down a line. So over the last 2 years, we have continued to try and improve the visibility and the resiliency of the information to know where we're going to have a problem, and then work on getting freight expedited if there's going to be an issue. So I don't see us going suddenly from 4 hours of inventory to 8 hours or 10 hours, because where do you stop, right? What's the number that's going to make you safe? And I don't think anybody could have predicted COVID's changed in consumer demand behavior. That is something that, because people were home, they're buying more electronics, they're doing those kinds of things, and they put a huge strain on chip supply globally. That has been our biggest thorn, I think, for the automotive industry, is that adding capacity to that is very expensive and a long lead time, right? Plants are billions of dollars and take years to build, so you can't solve that problem overnight. But that has been a real issue for us. And Toyota, at the beginning, we were fortunate that we did make some supply chain changes when we had that tsunami incident, right, in Fukushima, the reactor issue. So Toyota strategically put some additional capacity and inventory in the supply chain for semiconductors, but that only lasts for so long, right? So recently, we've also been hit with some supply chain issues on the semiconductor side. So I do believe once we get through this issue, and get back to a bit more normal, some of this stuff will even out. We've had about long enough time to make some adjustments, and hopefully that'll be the case. My biggest fear, though, is the protectionist movement that's been so prevalent in the last year and a half, right? We worked through USMCA, terrific. We got a new agreement, everything's in place. People got to adhere to the spirit of the law and make sure that we work through that. And then we've had the Build Back Better, that's another potential risk to the auto industry. I think we're working through that. And then the border protest issues, right? Again, it's not a protectionist issue, but it is a potential disruption to free flow of goods. So I do worry that this protectionist movement, people will start thinking about where to make investments and where to place supply. So it's very, very important that in Canada, we continue to show our competitiveness. We continue to show this is the right place to make your next investment, right? We got great people. We have the ability to produce the highest quality products in the world, and we can demonstrate that on a regular basis. TMMC, we are the most awarded J.D. Power awarded plant in the Americas, North, South, Central, second most awarded in the world. And the most awarded is our sister plant in Kyushu that also makes the RX. Canada has the ability to compete. Just don't put barriers in place that don't allow us to do that.
That don't move and don't get out of the way. And it's interesting because the business world understands that completely. We understand supply chain. We understand, manufacturing or getting some products from outside of the country, bringing them here, assembling them together. And we understand that completely. Seems politicians don't understand that. They say, no, we should make it at home. A couple of politicians would say to me, Greg, this pandemic has really demonstrated we should be making more stuff at home that we need. Well, okay, that's fine. But where do you get the raw materials to build the things that you want to make at home? Well, you got to import those. So if you got to import those, it doesn't matter what we do. The supply chain is a critical component to absolutely everything from a manufacturing perspective. A car will go across the border several times before, or parts to the car, before it's assembled into a vehicle. And who knows whether it's finally assembled in the United States or finally assembled in Canada, but it'll go across the border back and forth several times. I think, how come it's so difficult to really say to the politician, let business, we'll work this all out, all these problems. You don't need to have protectionism, because actually you're destroying the resilience of your own worker if you start taking things away from them. I don't know how to deal with that.
Yeah, and I think it is education and awareness. It constantly needs to be brought to the surface and reinforced. And it's an easy statement to make. Oh, we should do things here at home, and we can protect our own supply chain. But when you start to dig layers and layers underneath that, you realize how integrated things are and how detrimental that is, because you're not going to find the best quality at the lowest price to be able to satisfy total demand just within your own. The smaller you make that space, the more difficult that is to do, and eventually prices will rise for consumers, right? But I think that we have been doing the right things to make that very visible. We've negotiated very good trade agreements, and we continue to do that. They need to stay out in the forefront, and we continue to remind our folks in Ottawa about that, and we'll support them when they have those discussions. And please ask us, right? If you have concerns and you want to work through that, we've got some very good relationships, and we try to make sure that we sustain that information flow and give them a good context so that they're making appropriate decisions. And I got to say that the government has had our backs, and they're working through this with the various trading partners, and I fully believe we'll come out the other side and still be okay.
Yeah, I have a funny feeling that Canada's politicians are probably more aware of what business needs than anybody. We're the one country out there reaching out, trying to get collective trade agreements together with everybody we possibly can. We know the importance of trade. The next, and we talked a little bit about the supply chain, which I really feel, I think one of the problems in the supply chain is people. We don't have enough people working in it, but that's going to be the next extension to this pandemic is the workforce. We had a workforce problem before the pandemic came along. I would go out and visit. I took about 4 months and I went around and visited small to medium-sized manufacturers in Cambridge. And without question, every single one of them, when I sat down at their desk and said, what's your number one problem? The number one problem was getting people. That was the one thing that kept them up at night. It's going to be, and everybody understands it's difficult during a pandemic to fill your trough from the immigration, but we have some very aggressive numbers, 400,000 plus a year that the federal government is trying to bring in. How important are immigrants going to be to the growth of the Canadian economy in the next, 3 to 10 years, let's say?
Yeah, I fully support that. The immigration, the activity, we just got to find a way to get them gainfully employed, right? And get them connected with the right opportunities. Some of the challenges I think that we do face is recognizing professional designations and education. I was talking to some other folks recently, and they had relatives who, their family member was a nurse or a doctor in another jurisdiction, another country, and 8-10 years experience. But when they came to Canada, they had to start over again. They basically had to go get recertified through the college, which meant retaking training, right? Years of classes and everything else. So that it's going to make that very difficult to get those people into the positions and filling the vacancies that we've got if we can't do something to recognize the previous experience and education. And you know, even some of the immigration laws that we've got in place, or the way that it's working right now, what we're seeing is that some of the programs that we've been supporting with immigrants, they've taken production positions for us and they've worked for a number of years, but when their visas end, they can't use the work here as a way to apply for that next visa, because basically it's not considered a unique skill. And, you know, so that the program breaks after a period of time. We got to make sure that our policies line up with what we're trying to achieve, and we can support, you know, those people who have come and have taken the right steps. So there is quite a bit of work to do to make all of that fit and find, you know, gainful employment for that number of immigrants.
Yeah. I've often said years ago, I used to always say we have the most highly educated cab drivers in the world in Toronto, you know, because you'd have doctors and lawyers and, you know, engineers driving cab, because they couldn't afford to go back to school to do what they needed to do to upgrade their. So hopefully, you know, we can convey that. We have been conveying that. And I think the pandemic has highlighted how important it is. They're bringing in 400 nurses who are foreign trained nurses, and they're giving them a quick path to get them into the healthcare system because we need them. Well, you know, we probably needed them before the pandemic. So let's make sure we don't tear down those barriers. I think there's a question here from John Tennant, which I think is really good and deserves some value to be answered. Toyota has established woven as a focus for new technology development. Can you tell us more about the woven initiative?
Yeah, woven is basically a city that they've created at the base of Mount Fuji that is going to bring together many of these technologies, because Toyota has basically focusing on CASE. I don't know if you've heard that term before, but you know, it's a connected autonomous service and electrified, right? These are all the aspects of mobility, because Toyota's strategy is to transition into a mobility company, and woven basically is a way to demonstrate all of those technologies in a practical setting in a city. So people will live there or are living there, and we are bringing our technology and suppliers' technologies together in that space to test some of these future technologies and initiatives. And it's a showcase for us. And unfortunately, it was planned that for the Tokyo Olympics, we would have the opportunity to bring the world to be able to see that, you know, what happened with all of that. So it's still there, still being developed. And Toyota is investing very heavily in this future technology space. We created a company here in the Americas called Connected Technologies. We've also got Toyota Research Institute that's working on this. CT, and their CT $1 billion investment to get it started, and a lot of PhDs, a lot of eggheads that have signed up and are participating in that company. But it's delivering real value for us, because you know, as we take a look at what the future of the automobile is going to become, it's going to need a heavy reliance on software connectivity, and software services are going to be very, very important to the future to be able to enable this connectedness, this autonomy, and the services industry. So Toyota is investing heavily in it, and most recently, you talked earlier about the products we're building here. Well, the NX is this new Lexus product that we're actually today is the official first start of production for that new product on our North line. And that vehicle is the next generation of Lexus. So it is Akio's Toyota's direction to his design group for a software first. So software first is an expression of trying to build that software architecture and platform with these new vehicles. And we've been kind of crucified in the media over the last couple of years for our navigation system and interface, and Connected Technologies was charged with building that first new generation product for this vehicle. And let me tell you, it's a huge step up. Really, really well done. A lot of new capabilities and functionality connected to a whole services network in the background. And we're really proud that NX is going to be the first one to have that system and be launched here. So the Toyota really is investing in this next step. And Woven, just coming back to the original question, Woven is a part of that. It's a demonstration city to allow all of that to be integrated and show that that future possibility.
Wow, it's so fascinating. And that my next question was going to be about the NX, and I was going to leave you your sales pitch but I know you're the manufacturer, you're not the sales arm, but you still want to make sure they're bought. So they need to be bought. But it's a pretty big feather in our cap here to have two Lexus models being manufactured in our plant.
Yeah, no, Greg, it's more than a feather, because those two models, RX is #1 selling luxury SUV. NX is the #2 Lexus selling product, right? Those two together, we will provide 60% of Lexus sales. Product will come out of this plant. So we are Lexus, right? What we do for quality and what we do for customer satisfaction basically sets the expectation for the whole brand. So very, very proud of the fact that that's coming out of a Canadian plant and we have a hand in it.
Will Cambridge be exclusively Lexus then at that point?
No, we've still got RAV4 on that line. We got RAV4 here and in Woodstock. And RAV4, I'll point this out too. RAV4, we also started production when I was in Kentucky. One of the challenges was getting that plant ready to make RAV4 because the sales of that product are so high. And but it does represent competition, right? Now we have another plant in Kentucky that is able to make RAV4. And it's a friendly competition, but not so friendly. Here that I can and keep the supply chain here in Canada. So but those two vehicles, Cambridge is basically making both of those Lexus product today, and I'm really looking forward to getting that NX out into the field.
So you'll be going back to now having a multi-model line.
That's right.
So what was unique and what a lot of people don't understand is years ago when you did the Corolla and Matrix, you'd have a Matrix coming right in behind a Corolla, and that the whole production system was designed around all the parts were there, and it was actually amazing when you understand it. And you look at it and you say, well, this is a completely, totally different car. And the same person is putting in parts for that car, which could be totally different parts. So how is it going to work with the Lexus? Because I know Lexus is I can remember Ray Tanguay saying, we focus on every aspect of this vehicle when it's being built. He used to get a text for every little defect that was coming along. I can remember that in the very beginning. So this is really important that things be absolutely dead perfect.
Yeah, Greg, and that's been our focus. I'm really proud of the fact that we already had Lexus capability here in Cambridge, right? That South Line, as I mentioned, the Quality Awards and the great job that they've been doing building Lexus. So we know how to build Lexus. That line over there in North, though, has been building Toyota since its inception. And what we had to do was make sure that those team members recognize the change in mindset, right? The expectation of a Lexus customer is the specification isn't enough. You got to make it to the specification, but you have to also make sure you understand what the customer expects. And if there is, additional care and attention to detail, craftsmanship that's required, it'll be in that process, and that team member will be capable. So we spent a lot of time cross-training, right? Sending team members in North over to South, and making sure that we understand that Lexus customer expectation on that line, in addition to introducing all the new technology and making that line capable of building that Lexus product.
Let's talk quickly about maybe some EV stuff. I think we see the world getting interested in electric vehicles. I have a number of friends that are driving, maybe not all electric, but some of them, hybrid electric vehicles, but a few of them driving all electric vehicles as well. People are looking at the gas pumps and saying, well, it's $1.60 a liter. Holy smokes, I got to be able to find a better way, to give me energy than going to the gas station. However, I've also talked to people who say, Yeah, but if you got an all electric vehicle and you stop at a supercharged station, it's going to cost you just about as much as a liter of gas. I didn't know that, but that's what they're saying. So, maybe it isn't all electric. There are other opportunities that Toyota's working on as well. So why don't you talk a little bit about the electric evolution with Toyota, but also other aspects of power vehicles?
Sure. Toyota has been involved in electrification for a long time, right? That Prius it's almost 20 years old now, over 10 million Priuses, and that family of hybridization that's already been out into the field. And you and I were talking earlier about the fact that it isn't just about electrification. BEV, battery electric vehicles has become the buzzword, and everyone's talking about, oh, I got to get a battery electric vehicle, but it's a bit of marketing. Because really it's about greenhouse gas reduction. That's really what we're trying to achieve, right? We want to make this a better planet. We want to try and save the environment. So how do we get there faster, and how do we get there with more people participating? And if you look at the constrained resource in electrification, it really is the battery. The battery is the thing that is going to cause the biggest challenge for the world. There isn't enough mineral available. There isn't enough supply of critical components to be able to electrify our entire vehicle fleet. And the amount of that constrained resource in a battery, like a Tesla, if you take a look at that battery equivalent, you could make 7 hybrid vehicles for that one battery electric vehicle. Now, I guarantee you the greenhouse gas reduction from 7 people driving a hybrid versus 1 driving a battery electric vehicle, there's a much bigger impact on the environment, right? But that's, again, getting the science and numbers, and some people maybe don't want to listen to that. So Toyota has been on the hybrid path for a long time, but we're also committed to electrification. And Accio late last year basically came out and said Toyota is committed to battery electric vehicles as well. And he announced that he announced 30 different products as a future potential. And he did say the targets for Lexus, for example, in North America, Lexus will be 100% electrified. 100% battery electric by 2030, and globally by 2035. So they are committed to battery electric vehicles, and the progress to get there, the technology is still rapidly changing, right? Is it going to be lithium ion? Is it going to be solid state? Is it going to be lithium iron phosphate? The chemistry is continuing to evolve and change very rapidly. So we're working through that. And Toyota has many different powertrains. On one end, you've got just hybrid battery electric vehicles. Now we've got plug-in hybrid electric vehicles, and you have the option to go completely battery electric as well, in addition to ICE. But you'll start to see pure ICE go away, and it'll be some version of the electrified powertrain that's available now in vehicles. Hydrogen is also potential. It's out there as a powertrain. Toyota, we have the Mirai as a product, but the hydrogen story I still think is a matter of supply, being able to get access to hydrogen, right? We don't have a very good refueling infrastructure. I think you'd be real challenged to drive a hydrogen vehicle from one end of Canada to the other, since we only have 2 refueling stations in Ontario. So that I think it will take a bit of time. More likely, commercial space will start first, because with a commercial product, your route, where you're starting, where you're ending, how much you need. You can establish your own supply to be able to make that process work. And we're looking at things like that, right? So it's probably going to be commercial that will drive the adoption of hydrogen and create the infrastructure that later we can have, private citizens plug into. So it's there. Technology is mature, but it's probably going to take a bit more time.
I know even those folks that I know who have all electric vehicles, the anxiety between refueling stations is huge in some cases. I know one individual drives routinely from here to Montreal, and all electric vehicle. If he wasn't on the 401 corridor, he'd have maybe some trouble. But I think you're right. The hydrogen, I think the hydrogen alternative offers some really interesting. I know there's big fans of that out there in the automotive industry, but Again, it's too bad it didn't kick off a little sooner, so that it might have overtaken the whole battery craze. Because I think, I love the idea of it, but it kind of scares me a little bit. These great big batteries, when they expend their life, what are we going to do with them, and how are we going to deal with them? And there's all sorts of other problems along with that. One question that came out of that, it maybe doesn't relate to that, but John Voss asked about autonomous vehicles. I thought I would have said 5 years ago, I would have said we'd have fully autonomous vehicles in 10 years. I'm not so certain we're going to get there. I think there's been a little bit of a pullback on that to some degree. However, there's no question about it. There's still going to be innovation, and at some point in the future, I likely won't see it, but there's going to be fully autonomous vehicles that are going to be doing lots of things. Do you think that, as John pointed out, is going to have an impact on car ownership? Can we buy one as a few people in the neighborhood and say, hey, let's all go splits on a couple of cars?
Yeah, it's an interesting possibility. I'm sure you're going to see different segments take on different pieces, right? But I believe that it's going to take some really big advances before we get to the fully autonomous case. And there's also the regulatory side of it, right? Because when an autonomous vehicle has an accident, whose fault is it?
Yeah.
And so liability will be a big issue that needs to be addressed and overcome before that autonomous vehicle thing goes far down the road. But ride sharing, that is definitely a possibility. Personally, I still like my car, and I still like to have time in it, and I like to know nobody else has driven it. And so it'll be wild for me personally to be able to switch over to ride sharing. That being said, when I travel now, now with COVID maybe a little different, but before COVID, I used Uber all the time. Yeah. Right? I wouldn't get a taxi anymore. I would fly to whatever destination. I'd grab my Uber. I'd go to there, and the service was easy on the phone, and I found it very, very convenient. It was reliable, and it was very, very cost effective. So, yeah, I think things will transition, and you'll see an impact on how people perceive vehicles and what they do. And I do know, I see it in my own family, right? The younger generation perceives vehicles differently than we did. For me, it was freedom, right? I got a car, I can go and do whatever I want. Now I think mom and dad's pockets are pretty deep, so why would I want to go? So they just seem to have a different attitude towards cars and mobility and what they represent than they did when we were kids. So we'll have to see how that plays out.
I think if that Uber showed up with no driver in there, you might be a little more hesitant. You might be looking for that cab, but I don't know. I've had some experience in autonomous kind of vehicle. It's unnerving. There's no question about it. Like when you let go of all controls, it's boy, oh boy, it's hard when it's got to go around that corner, and you're hoping it's going to go around that corner, and it does. But I just don't. Maybe it's my generation, or older people are going to say, "Yeah, I'm not going to ever trust that stuff." But I always thought it would be kind of neat to have one where I could just whistle my car over to the pick me up and take me to where I want to go. But I think we're a long, long ways away from that. And I think, probably in talking about electrifying cars and maybe, other ways of improving the automobile experience are probably going to take precedence over all of that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it will take time, and we come back to the NX. The NX, for the electrified versions of it, it has an auto parking app, right? You can get out of the car. You can tell it which parking spot you want it to park in, right? And you stand there and the car will park itself. So those are things that, baby steps maybe, but as you get more comfortable that it's capable and it does what it's supposed to do, then, you'll probably consider taking bigger steps. But for me right now, I'm like you, I want to have my hands on the wheel.
Yeah. And I think that parking option is very cool. Like I've seen lots of people in mall parking spots over the line doing stupid things. They need that app on their car. They need that on their car. There's no question about it. Kudos to Toyota for for developing that so that people can park properly in parking lots. You've got a long history in Cambridge. I know it's great to have you back in town. We missed you while you were away, but that's fine. We got you back. How important is community to you, Frank Voss, but also to Toyota?
Personally, it's very important, right? I mean, KW has been great for me personally and my family. I raised my kids here. It's a wonderful place to raise a family and to be a part of the community. From Toyota's perspective, it's always been our philosophy to build where we sell. And when we move into a community, we want to make sure that we are giving back, right? And we are helping the community to grow and develop and make it a better place for people to live. And that the best way that we can do that is to provide a great economy and to support with good paying jobs and help it thrive through manufacturing. So that's a primary thing. But secondary, we can also do things to support putting good programs in place and giving back through whether that's through donations or through team member support. Right. We also like to see our team members get involved in the community and we support them whether it's with time or with some limited funding to help them get some good things off the ground. So it's really important to think about those things, and I've tried to give those same kind of values to my kids, right, to make sure that they think about that and spend a little bit of their own time and their own money giving back to where they live.
Yeah, Toyota's been, such an important partner for the communities and organizations in the region of Waterloo, and we're, thankful every single day that TMMC is here. Is Toyota's future in Canada really, really strong?
That's a good question. I want to believe that we have a very compelling story to continue investing in Canada. As I mentioned before, right? We have great quality. We've got wonderful people and access to excellent talent here. This region, we're in the technology corridor of Canada. You can't find a better place to find exceptional talent, right? We got the universities here. We have all the suppliers that have real depth and capability. And we have seen the supply chain, fortunately, we have seen the shift in production volume around North America. And I think Canada is at real risk if we don't continue to put forward a strong case for future investment, that we're at real risk with our auto industry here. So anything that I can do and that our industry can do to continue to make this the compelling case to spend that next dollar, you'll have my time and energy to support it. So I fully believe that the Team MC is going to be here for a long time and fighting for every car that we can manufacture. And, if you take a look at this transition, the industry is going to go through a major technology transition. Electrification is going to put a big upheaval. And it's at those times of change that you're at the greatest opportunity, but you're also at the greatest risk. So we got to make sure that we continue to sell the story and to tell people and show people why we are the right place to put that next dollar.
Yeah. Always fascinating, Frank, to get together and talk to you. I know everybody watching certainly appreciates you coming on, but more importantly, appreciates your leadership there at TMMC and in the community. And I also personally thank you for allowing me to borrow your brother once a month to come to a board meeting. It's very nice to have him, and he brings the same sentiment as you do oftentimes in around our board table. So I certainly appreciate the Voss influence on the Cambridge Chamber of Commerce in many regards. So thanks very much for taking your time today to be with us. Have a great rest of the week, and keep leading the charge that you're leading. Thank you, sir.
Appreciate the opportunity, Greg. Good to talk to you, and I will look forward to doing it again sometime.
Yep, we will. Thanks very much.
Okay.
Well, there you go, folks. Frank Voss, wonderful opportunity to sit and kibitz with him for a little while. It's very difficult to get him because he is an incredibly busy individual, and we thank him every day for what he's doing for our Toyota plant. Go to cambridgechamber.com for some of our upcoming events. We got bi-weekly, actually bi-monthly chamber chat tomorrow from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. Tomorrow's going to be Scott Higgins from HIP Developments, going to be talking about a new program that he's going to be offering to, or that the community is going to be offering to young talent. So you might want to join that. That's tomorrow from 9 to 10. We have our business growth series sponsored by Cowan Insurance, leadership and entrepreneurship on Thursday, March the 3rd, 11 to 12 p.m. That's online. And International Women's Day, Tuesday, March the 8th, from 9 a.m. to 10:15 a.m. Boy, you got to see that lineup. What a fantastic lineup of individuals, including Bardish Chagger from Waterloo, our MP there. It's going to be a great event. So ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. Have a great afternoon.